Hi, everybody. Welcome back for my week 6 presentation on AI and instructional design. Over the last 5 weeks, we've talked about learning theories, instructional design models, backwards design, Bloom's taxonomy, and assessment alignment, as well as instructional strategies and technology selection. And if there's one theme that keeps showing up over and over again, it's coherence. Coherence between what we say students should learn, how we assess it, and the activities and materials we design. So this week, instead of treating AI like this shiny separate thing, I want to frame it inside that same principle. The readings this week, especially the EDUCAUSE article on how AI is transforming instructional design, describe AI as a rapidly emerging force in the field. But what stood out to me is that AI integration still lacks widely adopted frameworks or best practices. That means we have to be especially intentional when we work with this. AI doesn't replace instructional design. It either supports coherence or it disrupts it, depending on how we use it. By the end of this presentation, I want to do two things. First, I want to explain how AI is impacting instructional design with specific examples. Then I'll walk through the actual tools I used in my project, mainly ChatGPT and Notebook LM, and show how that same workflow can be replicated using district-approved tools like Gemini, Google Gemini, and Diffit. So where does AI fit in instructional design? When I think about AI in instructional design, I don't think about it as a new model. I think about it as something that sits inside the models we already use. In our articles, it highlighted ways AI can streamline analysis, content creation, and assessment development. But those processes still live inside structured frameworks like ADDIE and backwards design. If we look at ADDIE, analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, AI can support each of those stages. It can help analyze standards, draft objectives, generate materials, suggest formative assessments, and even help organize feedback data. The same is true in backwards design. AI can help brainstorm essential questions, draft assessment ideas, or suggest learning activities. But here's the key point. AI can generate options. It cannot determine alignment. Coherence still depends on us as educators. It depends on whether the objective, assessment, and activity are intentionally connected. AI can move us faster, but it doesn't replace instructional reasoning. I next want to look at 3 major impacts that I have seen when working with AI. The first major impact I've seen, and one that our articles emphasize, is acceleration and iteration. AI dramatically reduces drafting time. For example, I can put into chat or Notebook LM or Google Gemini specific TEKs that are being taught in class. I can then ask for measurable objectives aligned to a specific Bloom's level. I can generate rubric language, and I can draft a formative assessment in seconds. But honestly, the bigger advantage is iteration. I can ask for multiple versions. I can adjust cognitive level. I can refine wording quickly. That allows for better design decisions because I'm not stuck rewriting from scratch every time. The second impact is differentiation at scale. The Ditch That Textbook article lists dozens of AI tools designed specifically for classroom use, many of which focus on generating level text and adaptive supports. Differentiation used to mean hours of rewriting the same concept at different reading levels. Now, AI allows us to maintain the same essential understanding while adjusting complexity or vocabulary. That supports access without lowering rigor, which actually strengthens overall coherence across learners. The third impact is a shift in our role as educators. With AI, instructional designers become less about producing every sentence from scratch and more about evaluating, refining, and aligning. We become curators. We become quality control. we become the coherence check. And that actually requires more expertise, not less. So this week we were asked two important questions. First, what is the impact of AI on the instructional design process? Ultimately, AI increases efficiency. It increases personalization. It lowers the barrier to content production. But it also increases the need for strong alignment and ethical awareness, especially in a field where best practices are still emerging. The second question, how can educators optimize AI? Optimization starts with clarity. AI works best when we already know the standard, the objective, and the cognitive level we're targeting. It requires reviewing outputs carefully. It requires protecting student data, and it requires remembering that AI drafts, it doesn't decide. When AI is anchored in backward design, it supports coherence instead of replacing it. So in looking at my specific project on sectionalism in the United States for our backward design lesson, I used two tools, Notebook LM and ChatGPT. First, what I want to highlight is Notebook LM. In a previous presentation I showed how Notebook LM could synthesize uploaded documents and generate structured summaries and study guides. That experience really shifted how I thought about this as a design tool. Notebook LM only works from documents you upload. That's powerful for instructional design. When I was designing my Civil War unit, I uploaded TEAC standards, pacing documents, and primary sources. Notebook LM helped me see patterns, recurring vocabulary, thematic overlaps, and connections across documents. It didn't design the lesson, but it helped me see coherence across materials before I started building activities. For me, its strength is in its synthesis during the analyze and design stages of our backwards design. Now, I want to be transparent. For my actual instructional design project, I used ChatGPT as my primary drafting tool. I used it to draft measurable objectives aligned to Bloom's verbs. I used it to generate primary source style excerpts at an appropriate reading level. I used it to create formative questions and draft rubric language. But I did not ask it to design my lesson. I provided the TEAC standards, I specified the cognitive level, I gave context about the unit, then I reviewed every output for historical accuracy, rigor, and alignment. ChatGPT accelerated my drafting process, though. It allowed me to iterate quickly, but coherence and quality still required my professional judgment. David Wiley's discussion of AI and instructional design in OER also highlights this balance. AI can expand access and production, but instructional expertise still guides meaning making. Now, after I had started creating this, my district changed its viewpoint on the use of open AI tools for classroom use. I think that's important, though, to show this and how this workflow is transferable to different types of AI tools. The real takeaway isn't use ChatGPT, it's understand the instructional workflow. The same design process can be replicated using other AI platforms that align with district policies. So whenever I was looking at this, I wanted to look at two specific tools that my district has actively said that we could use to help create content for our classrooms. So for using Google Gemini instead of Chat, Google Gemini integrates into Google Workspace, which makes it practical in K-12 environments. The same way I drafted objectives and formative assessments in ChatGPT, I could input a TEAC standard into Gemini within Google Docs and request measurable objectives at the analyze or evaluate level. I can also ask Gemini to draft rubric criteria aligned to Bloom's verbs. And I could generate exit tickets tied directly to the essential question. The instructional reasoning doesn't change, only the platform does. That's important. Effective AI use is about design thinking, not tool loyalty. When I also looked at Diffid AI as a tool for this type of materials I created with Chat, For differentiated content, Diffit would actually be a strong alternative. As highlighted in the Ditch That Textbook list of classroom AI tools, platforms like Diffit are built specifically for educators. They allow you to input a topic or text and generate multiple reading levels, vocabulary supports, and comprehension questions. If I were designing this lesson strictly within district-approved tools, I would likely use Diffit to create multiple reading levels of the same historical content. That would maintain conceptual coherence while supporting access for diverse learners. It's also extremely useful within history because so many of the really good quality articles that we have available for our students are at a higher level thinking that most K-12 education students are not ready to pursue. They're graduate level texts that are written by professors that contain all of the useful information, but just need to be brought down to a level that our students will understand. This program would be great for that, to help make sure that my students get all the information they need from credible sources, but an area that at a level that they understand. Again, the workflow though stays the same, just the platform shifts. Now, we can't talk about AI without understanding some of the ethical and professional considerations. AI use requires professional responsibility. There are risks of bias. There are risks of inaccurate information. In K-12 settings, FERPA considerations are critical. We should never input identifiable student data into these systems. There's also a professional risk of over-reliance on these types of technologies. If we stop thinking critically because AI drafts quickly, coherence breaks down. AI should amplify instructional redesigning, not replace it, especially in a field where formal AI frameworks are still developing. Even when we use ChatGPT, at the bottom of the screen, it says that Chat could make inaccurate information. You have to double check this. I remember whenever I was generating some primary source documents that would be used for stations, I had to look at every element of those photos because there were several times words would be misspelled, words would just turn to gibberish. I remember with one of them, they generated Frederick Douglass, who is an African-American historical figure, as a Caucasian man. This would not have worked if I had put this into the classroom. So you have to make sure that everything is correct. We don't just trust it blindly. Let's now look at this in regards to the application towards my final project. In my sectionalism and Civil War units, AI ultimately supported the development of the lesson, but coherence guided the decisions that we made. Notebook LM helped synthesize standards and sources. ChatGPT accelerated drafting of objectives, content, and formative assessments. If implementing this unit under district policy constraints, I would replicate that process using Notebook LM, Google Gemini, and Diffit AI, as I spoke about earlier. In every case, I aligned material to the Texas state standards, ensured Bloom's cognitive rigor, verified historical accuracy, and maintained alignment across objectives, assessments, and activities. AI enhanced the efficiency and differentiation, but it did not determine the instructional intent of the project. So to wrap all of this up, ultimately AI impacts instructional design by accelerating development, supporting differentiation, and shifting the designer's role towards evaluation and alignment. Educators can optimize AI by anchoring it in backward design principles, maintaining standards alignment, reviewing outputs critically, and protecting student data. If coherence remains the guiding principle of instructional design, then AI is not the architect. It's the drafting assistant. The instructional designer is still the architect. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. My references will be on the next slide. Thank you. Bye.